Imagine a nation humiliated by war, crushed by debt, and spiraling through hyperinflation and mass unemployment. Then, almost overnight, the same nation surges with discipline, industry, and a terrifying sense of destiny. That is the story of how Hitler and the Nazis very nearly bent the world to their will. This video isn't about sensationalism. It's about the mechanics of power, how a fringe movement exploited economic pain, propaganda, and strategic gambles to win and win and win, until the bets got too big to cover. By the end, you'll see how close the world came to a different map, and the precise fault lines where that dream cracked. In a few minutes, you'll hear about a single paper financial trick that secretly fueled Germany's rearmament and fooled foreign observers for years. Keep watching. 1. The vacuum. Crisis creates opportunity. Post-World War I, Germany was a nation in shock. The Treaty of Versailles stripped territory, capped the military, and demanded reparations. The Weimar Republic struggled to stabilize a society ravaged by inflation, political street battles, and the Great Depression's unemployment. Into this void stepped Adolf Hitler, a skilled orator who promised order, restoration, and revenge. What made the Nazi rise possible wasn't just charisma. It was a coalition of fear. Industrialists wary of socialism, conservatives craving stability, and millions who felt alienated by parliamentary chaos. Through backroom deals and tactical concessions, Hitler became chancellor in 1933, and within months the Reichstag Fire and Enabling Act handed him dictatorial powers. The next section shows how a mix of radio, cinema, and youth programs transformed ideology into a nationwide operating system. 2. Engineering consent. Propaganda, terror, and the capture of youth. A near takeover of the world starts at home. Joseph Goebbels built a propaganda machine that saturated life with simple myths. National rebirth, a betrayed people, a destined empire. Radio sets became household totems. Films glorified unity and sacrifice, and rallies choreographed mass emotion into loyalty. But propaganda alone didn't seal the deal. The SS and Gestapo imposed fear, dissolving independent unions, arresting opponents, and centralizing power. The regime captured the future through Hitler Youth and Bund Deutscher Mittel, binding adolescents to the state's values, rituals, and obedience. By controlling media, culture, and childhood, the Nazis converted millions into participants, or at least bystanders, in a national project of expansion. Up next, the money trick they used to rearm without alarming the world's accountants, and why it almost worked. 3. The mirage of prosperity, rearmament, and the hidden ledger. The regime promised jobs and delivered, but the engine was rearmament. Public works like the Autobahn boosted morale and visibility, yet the big driver was a military buildup masked by clever finance. Enter MAFO bills, a web of IOUs channeled through a dummy company to pay arms manufacturers, hiding debt off the official books. This strategy stimulated industry, cut unemployment, and made Germany look like a miracle economy, while quietly building tanks, planes, and ammunition at scale. The 4-year plan then aimed to make Germany autarkic. Synthetic fuels, ersatz rubber, so blockades wouldn't strangle war aims. To neighbors, Germany looked vigorous. To insiders, it was a race against time. Expansion had to feed the machine with resources before the bills came due. Watch how a chain of diplomatic gambles, each one a test the world failed, opened the door to war on German terms. 4. The Gambler, Diplomacy as a Weapon, 1933 to 1939. Hitler probed the limits. He quit the League of Nations, rearmed openly, and in 1936 remilitarized the Rhineland, a huge risk that paid off because France and Britain did not shoot. He then annexed Austria, Anschluss 1938, and staged the Munich drama to slice the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia, promising no more claims. A few months later, he swallowed the rest. The masterstroke came in August 1939, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with the Soviet Union. It stunned the world and carved Eastern Europe into spheres of influence, clearing the path to invade Poland without a two-front war, for now. Each bluff that went uncalled emboldened the next. The table was set for a lightning war. Coming up, the recipe for blitzkrieg and how it shocked Europe into collapse. 5. The Hammer Falls. Blitzkrieg and the cascade of early victories. Blitzkrieg wasn't magic. It was coordination. Fast-moving panzers pierced weak points, motorized infantry widened the gap, and tactical air power, Luftwaffe, paralyzed communications. In 1939, Poland collapsed in weeks. In 1940, Germany struck north into Denmark and Norway, then pivoted west through the Low Countries and the Ardennes. An impassable forest. France, considered the strongest land power in Europe, fell in 6 weeks. The German plan sidestepped the Maginot Line, encircled Allied armies, and forced a desperate evacuation at Dunkirk. Europe was stunned. The old playbook was obsolete. At this moment, the Nazi project looked nearly unstoppable. But there was one island that refused to fold, and it had radar, code breakers, and a will to fight alone. 6. The island that wouldn't fall. Britain stands alone. After France, Hitler expected Britain to negotiate. Instead, Prime Minister Churchill vowed resistance. The Battle of Britain turned the skies into the new front. German bombers met an integrated British air defense. Radar chains, fighter command sectors, and swift Spitfire hurricane responses. It wasn't a duel of bravery alone, it was a triumph of systems. Meanwhile, an undeclared war raged at sea. U-boats hunted Atlantic convoys, nearly starving Britain of food and fuel. But convoy tactics, growing escort fleets, and advances like HFDF, ASDIC sonar, and code-breaking Ultra slowly tilted the odds. Britain's survival denied Hitler control of the seas and left a bridgehead for future Allied return. If the island stood, maybe the East would fall. Operation Barbarossa promised resources, living space, and a knockout blow. 7. The Eastern Gamble, Barbarossa, and the Edge of Collapse. In June 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union with 3 massive army groups aimed at Leningrad, Moscow, and Ukraine/South Caucasus. Early results were catastrophic for the Soviets. Huge encirclements, millions of prisoners, and deep penetrations. It looked like the Nazi vision of Lebensraum would become concrete. But success bred overreach. The Germans split focus between Moscow and the resource-rich South. Supply lines stretched across poor roads and vast distances. The Rasputitsa mud seasons, and then winter froze vehicles and men. Logistics couldn't keep up, and the Red Army did not break. Soviet factories shifted east beyond bomber range, churning out T-34s and artillery with ruthless efficiency. Germany came within sight of Moscow, but the city held. The War of Weeks turned into a war of attrition. There was still a path to victory: oil. If the Axis seized the Middle East or the Caucasus, history might have bent. 8 choke points: North Africa, the Caucasus, and the oil that got away. War runs on fuel. In North Africa, Rommel drove the British back toward Egypt, threatening the Suez Canal, the route to Middle Eastern oil and Asian supplies. For a moment, Axis control of Suez plus a push through the Caucasus could have squeezed the Allies hard. But the Desert War was a supply duel. Long Axis lines across the Mediterranean were hammered by Allied air and sea power. Battles like El Alamein halted Rommel. In the east, the drive for Baku's oil stalled at Stalingrad, where street-by-street combat bled the German army white. The Sixth Army's surrender marked a psychological pivot. The Nazi aura of invincibility shattered. Still, consider the counterfactual. If Suez fell and Caucasus oil flowed, the Axis might have linked theaters and starved their enemies. The story of how Hitler and the Nazis almost took over the world isn't just about tanks and treaties. It's about how fear, humiliation, and economic pain can be forged into a weaponized story. When that story meets organized propaganda, elite complicity, and a series of unpunished risks, nations can slide into catastrophe at blinding speed. The safeguards are not mysterious. Independent institutions, free press, civic education, rule of law, and leaders willing to pay short-term political costs to stop long-term disasters. History doesn't repeat perfectly, but it rhymes and it warns. If you found this breakdown useful, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which critical turning point you think mattered most. Rhineland, Britain's stand, or Stalingrad? Next week, we'll dissect a different almost. A moment when a tiny technological choice could have changed everything. Want to see how a secret encryption breakthrough saved thousands of lives and shortened the war? That's in our next deep dive. Don't miss it.